And there's a real need for strength of mind if you're going to be in this for the long term, because you will hear and see some horrific things.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another interview video by the Middlesex Mooting Society. My name is Najat Mustafa, and today I'm really excited to have the opportunity to interview Miss Kishma Bolaji. And Kishma is a medical negligence lawyer that's based in the UK. And luckily enough, she had some time for us today, so I'm really excited to talk to her. Yeah. Hey Kishma, how are you?
Hi, Najat. I'm great. Thank you. It's really good to be here with you today.
Yeah, I know a lot of students are really excited to learn more about medical law, including myself, since it's a module in our third year. So we're all very excited to learn more. So just as kind of like an intro question, could you give us a brief intro into what your journey into medical law was like, and why did you choose to work in this field?
Okay, well, my journey into law generally was not straightforward. But in my mind, I was going to be a corporate lawyer. I am from the British Virgin Islands, so it's an actual tax haven. And so the experience I'd had up until I moved to the UK was all about corporate law and mutual funds. And so the plan was always to gain experience and knowledge in that area and then move back home. But I stayed in the UK for a while to sort of build my experience. And as part of my training contract, I was assigned to the medical negligence team, which at the time was a really tiny team. And they just needed a junior to help support the seniors that were trying to build the department. I knew nothing about medical law, and I can't say that I was particularly interested over and above, you know, the childhood ambition to become a pediatrician, which quickly waned. So it was really interesting, and I've said so many times that within 2 or 3 days of working in medical negligence, I knew that my life plan had changed. I knew that what I wanted, the kind of lawyer that I wanted to be, had completely turned around, because you know who you are as a person, you know what your skill set is, you know what you enjoy doing as a lawyer or as a professional. And medical negligence fit everything. It was the perfect fit. I like people. I enjoy supporting people, but I also like the ability to be yourself. I think that as a corporate lawyer, it's easy to fall into a very, I don't want to say the word stuffy, but there's a very there's a different persona, there's a different behavior in that area, that field of law. Whereas in medical negligence, litigation, and some of the other private client areas, the client isn't looking for you to be some smart, over-the-top person in a really nice suit saying big words. These are people that have been injured or bereaved, and they just want to talk to another human being. And being able to bring Kishma to work and be myself, speak to people in a normal way, at a human to human level, it just sold medical negligence for me, and I have been at it for many, many years now.
That really makes the field sound so amazing to me, because I know a lot of students, we sort of feel like we can't really be ourselves if we're choosing to enter the legal field. We have to put on, this persona of very professional, and I know what I'm talking about, and I can say all of these fancy big words, but to hear that, you can kind of bring yourself and it's more of a focus on helping people, that sounds good. Yeah. And I know that another thing that students tend to focus on when thinking about medical law is this reward, or this idea of, I'm going to be able to help people, especially those who have really been affected by medical negligence, by catastrophic injury. So in your work in this field, what aspects would you say are the most rewarding, and they remind you why you chose this to begin with?
Okay, that's a really good question, and luckily for me, it's an easy one to answer. So, medical negligence litigation can take a long time. Unlike other aspects of litigation work, it can take years, especially when you're dealing with a brain injured baby. You've got to see how that child develops develops and what their specific needs and disabilities are.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you're watching this baby grow, and you develop a really good relationship with the family. You almost become part of the family. What's really rewarding is getting to a point where you can see the impact of what you're doing and what you've been working toward for years on that child, whether that's finally getting to a place where you can move the family out of their home into more suitable accommodation, with adaptations being made to the home so that the child can move around more comfortably and independently, and seeing how that child comes alive because they're now being given the support and assistance and facilities that they need in order to try to be as independent as possible. You're able to get the specialized wheelchairs and funding to enroll them into different activities and get specialist therapies, and just really get to a point of the litigation where you're past the liability stage and there's now funding available to have a real impact on that child's life or that client's life. That is really rewarding, because it can be quite hard going litigation, where there's a denial of liability and you're sort of back and forth arguing different allegations. Getting past that bit is always one of the first really, really exciting parts of it. And then, of course, there's the end where the litigation is finished, the case is settled, and no matter how good a relationship you've developed with your client, they're still your client. You have to let them go.
Mhm.
But you let them go knowing that you've fought hard and you've done your very best and you've given them as much support and assistance as you possibly can. And you feel good about yourself because you've done that and you've worked for many years to help achieve something really incredible for that person. So there's a lot of rewards about doing medical negligence litigation, but they all sort of revolve around people and just bringing joy and satisfaction and support.
That's beautiful. Wow. Like, I feel like it kind of connects to human rights in a way where it's the sense of you feel like you're fighting for people, you're making sure that their lives are better.
Yeah.
And after the catastrophe that hit them in the disaster. And
Yeah.
I know that many students, when they're looking at this field and they're looking at, okay, like, I really want to be a great medical negligence lawyer. A lot of kind of the soft skills and the basic skills that we're taught to have in university is like, be good at legal research, be good at drafting memoranda. And like, that's fine. It's okay. I always say, but when I look at like, as more and more people join law and as more and more people are looking to work in this field, it just feels so common and so like, well, everybody can do that. Everyone can research and draft legal documents. But what skills, and even specifically soft skills, have you said or have you found to be just like so helpful to you in medical negligence in your career?
Yeah. I think that all those things that they tell you and they teach you is important, no matter what area of law you're going into. At the end of the day, you're a lawyer, and there's certain skills you need to have, no matter what field, to be a good lawyer, including legal research. But medical negligence is a very niche area, and there are some personalities that won't fit just because you need to be, first of all, really empathetic. Um, it's not easy talking to a complete stranger about what might be the most awful experience, the most soul destroying experience of your life. I need to be somebody that people feel that they can talk to and open up to, somebody that is responsive to their needs, somebody that realizes that they're struggling at this minute and we need to take a break. And so, so you need to take a walk and then come back and we'll continue the conversation. You need to be attuned to your client and empathetic to their needs. I think good communication is really important. You don't need to be some posh sounding person. I have an island accent, as you can hear. But you need to be able to communicate in clear and simple language. They're not testing how clever you are. They just want you to relay the information to them in a way that they understand. And remember that people are coming at this from different educational levels as well. So you need to know your client and know how best to communicate with them. And that can be verbal or written. No long drawn out letters with lots of legal jargon. Just tell them in plain English what you're trying to say. So good communication would be the second one. And I think in terms of soft skills, the only other thing I would say specifically for the work we do in MedNeg is good attention to detail. And I guess maybe that applies to lots of areas as well. But for example, one of the first things that I would do when I take on a new case is review medical records. Now, I'm not medically trained and I don't know sometimes half of what's written there. And that's assuming you can actually read what's written in medical records, because the handwriting is just
handwriting is atrocious.
Very special.
Yeah.
So you need to, and I guess it comes with experience. You need to have really good attention to detail, because you're looking not always for the smoking gun, but you're looking for details that will help support the arguments that you're making, or things that you want to draw to your expert's attention and ask him, well, does that make a difference? What does that mean? So it's not just flicking through pages. It's about really looking and considering and Googling. I do a lot of Googling. And making sure things make sense to you and being ready to ask questions when they don't.
So kind of going back to what you said about the way that you look at cases and the way that you start to work on a case. And you said that you do a lot of research in terms of looking back at what was written in medical records.
Yeah.
What other kind of, I guess the word would be just techniques would you use to assess the potential of a case, to see, well, how strong is this going to be? How likely are we going to find success in the courts? And what sort of struggles are we going to have along the way?
I think different lawyers would answer that question differently, because different firms have different strategies for determining whether or not they're going to take a case on. Sometimes it's very clear. Sometimes, whatever has happened has triggered a serious incident report at the hospital, at the trust, and they've made admissions. They've acknowledged that the care and treatment provided fell below a reasonable standard, and you get that information from the client, and you know that there's good prospects of succeeding. Other times it's not at all straightforward. Other times you have an internal investigation report that says we didn't do anything wrong and we're sorry that you've had a hard time with it, but we've adhered to all our protocols and standards have been met. And I think it comes down to experience as well. So we screen cases, but then a senior lawyer will make a decision as to whether or not we progress further. And that's just based on the information provided by the client, the type of injury sustained, and proportionality sometimes, especially in today's world where costs are a whole subject that you don't want to get into today. You need to make sure that when you're taking the case on, that it's proportionate in terms of what the likely damages the client will receive are, as compared with the cost of investigating that type of case, that type of injury. And sometimes, at CL Medilaw, we love a challenge, and sometimes it's not clear. But just based on your experience and your knowledge about a particular type of injury, particularly where you're looking at babies who've been diagnosed with cerebral palsy, sometimes it's worth just taking a chance on the client, looking at the records, getting a preliminary report, and then reviewing prospects again. So different practices will do things differently. But in my firm, we are very open-minded, and we want to help, we want to support people. And if there's a chance that we can do that in a proportionate way, then we'll take the case on.
That's great. And I believe that approach is definitely something that more firms should adopt, especially as now that cases involving medical bias, I feel like, have been on the rise and being seen more recently as time has progressed. In those type of cases, oftentimes, would you agree with me that bias can tend to be very subtle, very kind of under the rug? And so when the patient or the client is attempting to complain and say, I suffered medical negligence as a result of my doctor's bias, how does that kind of affect the likelihood of winning the case? Is it still possible to win those cases?
Yeah, it's a, that's an interesting one, and yeah, absolutely. We would be really silly to think that bias and prejudices don't play a role in the care that people are receiving. One of the charities that we support is called the Motherhood Group, and they're very focused on shining a spotlight on the disparities in care and treatment that Black women are receiving, maternal health care that Black women are receiving as compared with their white counterparts. At the moment, we know that Black women are 4 times more likely than white women to die in childbirth. So this is happening, this is going on. And from a medical negligence perspective, it's not always the most straightforward argument to run, because how do you prove that?
Yeah.
I've yet to see a case that's come to us, and I don't know if any of my colleagues have come across anything like it, where um, we've successfully argued as the primary argument that the reason why this doctor or this nurse provided this treatment is because of racism or some other type of prejudice or bias against the patient. But it's very much prevalent. It's very much something that a lot of organizations, including the Motherhood Group, are addressing, or trying to raise public awareness about. It's a difficult case to run, so you have to counsel the client really, uh, really well. But if there's evidence, or we can instruct experts who are supportive of the case. So putting the bias aside, the procedure wasn't done correctly, or there was a negligent delay in doing something, that would be your focus. It may be that the procedure wasn't done correctly, or there was a delay because of the bias, where the claim would focus on the actual negligent treatment as opposed to the reason behind the negligent treatment, because we need to be able to evidence what we're alleging against the hospital trust.
I'm sure many patients must feel very frustrated if they truly believe that they suffered medical bias and as a result they suffered catastrophic injury or catastrophic loss, the death of a loved one. So in those situations where patients or clients, sorry, I keep saying patients, where clients walk into your office and they are so angry and just feel so emotionally distressed, how do you learn to just calm the situation down and focus more on what we can do rather than just kind of the emotional aspect of these cases?
Yeah. First of all, if something like that happens, and it's hard not to be angry too, it's hard not to be frustrated with them, because we're human beings, and you hear somebody relaying that type of story, and it's going to upset you, it's going to bother you. But as a lawyer, your role isn't to get angry and add fire to the situation, add fuel to the flame. You need to give that client an opportunity to talk about it. Sometimes they just need a moment to say what's happened and express their anger and express their frustration and let the tears roll down. And you need to sit there and allow them to, and offer them a drink, offer them tissues, and just give them that space and that time, because they need it and they deserve it. Once you've heard what's happened and you've given them an opportunity to share what's happened, then you start to talk to them about medical negligence litigation and strip it back in as simple terms as possible and explain, I understand that this is what's happened, and I completely understand why this has caused you such pain and anger. I'm 110% with you. But from a legal perspective, this is what I need to look at and prove in order for you to succeed in your negligence claim. And just take it back that way. Make sure they know that you're on their side and that you understand the frustration, even if you can't relate to what they've experienced. But make sure that from the very beginning, you're clear about what the law requires. Mm-hmm. Just because you're angry and you think this horrible thing has happened as a result of negligence, you've lost your loved one, you think that there's been bias, that's not enough. That's not how it works. You need to satisfy, and as law students, I'm sure you know what that criteria is. You need to satisfy specific criteria in order to succeed in a medical negligence case.
Right.
And sometimes that's hard for a grieving or angry person to digest.
So really sitting in those type of situations and those atmospheres, I can't imagine that you can just walk away from that and that won't have any personal effect on you, especially when this is happening on like a daily basis. So how do you personally deal with the emotions that come with working in this field and learning to step away from it and have, a separation?
Honestly, it can be difficult, and I think you get better at it over time.
Mhm.
I've been doing medical negligence litigation for a number of years, and you get better at compartmentalization. I remember as a trainee doing medical negligence, I was for the first time left with a client to take her witness statement. So my senior left the room and said, I'm going to leave you with Kishma to take your statement. And she proceeded to tell me what happened. But the more she talked about it, the more upset she got. And her mom was sat with her, and they both got very upset. And within no time, you had two women bawling their eyes out, clearly in pain. What happened was horrific. And having to relive it and tell that story was bringing up some real emotion. And I felt every bit of it. I felt every bit of it. And I found that I was struggling, sat in the room with these women to take the witness statement. You can't cry. They're not there for your sympathy. That's not your job. You're there to support them and allow them the space that they need when they need to take a break. So realizing that I was about to burst into tears, I suggested we take a break, offered her some more TCUs, suggested I get some teas and coffees brought in, and we all took a comfort break. I needed the break more than they did because I went to the toilet and I cried my eyes out, fixed my face, and went back into the room to continue the meeting. Now, that's not happened since. I've gotten better at sort of channeling my hurt for the client into doing a good job and moving things along as quickly as I can. But I can't tell you that it doesn't have an effect on me. I've just learned how to deal with it and sort of leave work and come home and be Kishma and not the lawyer. Otherwise, I'll just be a really stressed out and sad person all the time, which wouldn't be so good for my children.
Well, but that's so beautiful that you use, the emotion and the sympathy that you feel for them and also the anger on their behalf as fuel to push yourself and say, I'm going to make sure that I give them every amount of compensation that possibly that they can receive. That's really great.
If you don't feel that for your clients, if something about them doesn't invoke something in you, then you need to ask yourself whether you're in the right field. Medical negligence is not for everybody. Which it annoys me when firms that are not specialists in these areas sort of dabble, because it takes a special kind of skill set and attitude and behaviors to do this job really well. So if it's not doing something to you to hear the stories and see the emotion that comes out as clients open up to you, then you need to question whether you're in the right place. You don't need to cry, and you shouldn't be showing, tears in your eyes and, sympathy as such. Empathy, yes. Sympathy, no. But it makes you better. It makes you more focused. It makes you stronger. And yeah, you just get used to it.
Wow. Would you say that then that kind of sympathy and empathy is felt when you have a client who is actually the doctor or is the hospital? Is that some sort of kind of empathy and emotional connection there, or is it a bit more formal in comparison to patients?
Okay, so I know nothing about acting for doctors. So I've always only acted for claimants, and you will find that most practices are on one side or the other. So
Mhm.
you have firms that do medical negligence litigation that only act for the hospital and the trusts or the individual surgeon if it's a private doctor, and you have some firms that only do claimant. It gets difficult if you act for both because your client may be your defendant on another case. So it's easier. And in fact, I don't think I know of any firm that does both sides because of the conflict of interest.
So would you also say that the skill set that you need to bring to the table when working with a firm that only represents patients in comparison to only representing doctors or private hospitals or just hospitals in general, are those skill sets different, or would you say that they sort of have the same foundation?
Um, I don't know if I can answer that because I am seeing the injured person, I'm seeing the bereaved person, and the way they are presenting will be a lot different to the way a doctor or some other clinician is presenting. They are represented by there's a legal team that's dealing with it for them, and they may be interviewed once or twice, but they're not involved in the litigation as such. Um, I think both sides need to have really good investigative skills. I think you need to be good at reviewing records, either side, although they're probably better at it than I am. Um,
Understanding the handwriting, I'm sure, is a lot easier for them.
yeah. um, I don't know if I can say, I think that you have a different client who behaves differently and has different needs. So as a guess, I would say probably not,
Oh,
because what my clients need from me is not what a clinician will need from their legal department necessarily.
correct. Yeah, I'm sure that the it must be a different kind of requirement and different things that need to be proven in order to successfully win the case for the patient in comparison to the doctor. But kind
Well, it's the same. It's the same law. It's the same requirements. The same statutory requirements. Just sort of on the other side, you need to. They know what I need to prove.
of,
Um, so I have to. I have a positive obligation to prove my case, and their job is to show that my case is wrong, and
agree.
they will rely on independent experts in the respective fields in the same way that I rely on independent experts. So there is, in terms of procedure, we're both on the same page. But in terms of skill set, I think I need to be, I guess, I think you need to be empathetic on both sides because it's got to be difficult for a doctor being told that your negligence caused the baby's death. They're going to take that home. People go into medicine to help, not to cause harm.
Yeah.
And so if you feel responsible for, or you feel like you've made a mistake, or you're being accused of making a mistake that's caused somebody injury or loss, I suspect that that's going to have an impact as well. So the person representing them needs to have some level of empathy and understanding. So maybe you do have to have the same skill set. I'm not sure.
It's okay. I'll make sure to also ask a lawyer who represents
Defendant.
hospitals to get the full picture. Yeah,
It'd be interesting to hear their response. So
I
I'll look out for your videos on that.
got you. Don't worry. I think another question that kind of students are looking to have an answer to is obviously our university is based in Dubai, but many of them are looking to go and practice medical negligence and engage in the field in the United Kingdom, so in the UK. Is there any advice that's sort of specific to the UK that you would give to students who are looking to practice medical negligence there?
Um, Specific to the UK, no, I would say. I think medical negligence litigation, I think more than anything, if this is an area of law that you are passionate about and would like to learn more about, um, I think there's just some things that you need to be aware of um, before getting into it and understand that it's not an area of law that would suit every personality. It can be quite emotionally wearing. Um, And there there's a real need for strength of mind if you're going to be in this for the long term, because you will hear and see some horrific things, um, and it's quite a different reality from practicing in commercial property or real estate or corporate. The way I look at things, the way I analyze things, the way I feel about people that have been hurt, injured as a result of medical negligence, and sometimes just hurt and injured generally is different because of the exposure I've had to this type of work. It's really hard. And whilst people associate corporate law with long hours and a lot of reading and a lot of grinding, that applies equally to private client areas like medical negligence. It's not easier. Um, it's often less paid, so that's something to bear in mind. And yeah, it's a specialist area and not the easiest to get into because not that many firms practice it and practice it well. Um, it would be great to see more young people pursuing careers in medical negligence. I think it's an area of law that's not talked about enough and not shouted about enough because it's not high flying and high paying. But it's incredibly rewarding. So many people come into law because they want to help people and change the world. Well, here's one little way to do it. And whether you're doing it in Dubai or some other part of the world, I think you need to be prepared for the hard work. You need to be prepared for the emotional strain. Um, but you also can prepare yourself to be just, incredibly rewarded by the impact you're having on so many lives.
That's so beautiful. And I know that like you definitely convinced me. I'm ready. I'm going to
You
become a
ready?
medical student after this. Yes.
Fantastic. Send me your CV.
And right away. I mean, I know many students will obviously, of course, be very interested after watching this because many of them, again, like you said, enter the field of studying law of with this mindset of I want to change the world, I want to help people, and I want to fight for those who have been oppressed and misrepresented and mistreated by others. And
Yeah.
so your advice has been so valuable, Kishma. Thank you. And I think as a closing question, in regards to just any advice or any message that you'd like to give to the MDX Moving Society as a whole, what is your advice or a message that you would like to give?
A general message to um, students. Um, Stay focused. You're only in this space for a really limited period of time. Do all you can to set yourself up to be as marketable as possible. There's lots of time for partying, traveling, and generally being young and free. When you're at university, get your head down. You're there for a reason. I would also say that it's okay not to know what your next move is. You don't have to have all the answers at this stage. Law is just so broad. There's just all of these specialisms popping up. Um, I know intellectual property is one that I'm hearing quite a lot about recently. A lot of young people are talking about that. I'm hearing a lot about compliance as well. So these are areas of law that you haven't traditionally heard students talk about being interested in. There's a lot out there. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to know the answers and to have figured out life's mysteries whilst you're at university. Um, enjoy the moment, I guess. Enjoy the process of studying law. Enjoy the journey to get to qualification, and I think more than anything, I, I, I think advice that I wish I had and advice that I would give myself if I could speak to university version of me. It's just it's okay not to know everything. It's not okay not to have all the answers. Take it one day at a time and give it your best, no matter what you're doing, and just ride the waves.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kishma. Thank you so much for allowing me to annoy you with all the questions that I had. And I
Mhm.
know that so many students are really going to benefit from this, especially those going into studying medical law this year. And if you have a wave of CVs coming to hit you after this, you'll know why. So yeah.
Let them come to the UK. I'm always willing to answer questions on LinkedIn if anybody has any specific questions that they'd like to ask about medical negligence litigation. My stories on LinkedIn pretty much, so you can learn about me and how I got to this point in my career. Ask questions. This is how you learn. This is how you grow. And social media is such that there are lots of opportunities for you to connect with people and get information in a way that we weren't able to not that long ago. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm quite straight talking and just plain in the way that I approach questions. But yeah, I hope this has been helpful, and I hope I've inspired somebody to pursue medical negligence litigation. We need more of us doing this type of work.
Yes, we do. I can't wait to see all the change that is going to be coming into these students' minds after we watch this video, or after they watch this video.
Yeah, great.
Thank you so much, Kishma. Great.